Hachu misaksi.
Hachu misaksi.
Apstu.
I mistiu nono. Abstiu?
Okay. Mishju smo.
Oh.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how we maintain the languages that we are studying and how we absorb them. So both Mark and I, we have studied a lot, especially of John Peabody Harrington's notes. And, those notes can be very messy, very disorganized, and it can be really hard to maintain these languages when you have to do so much sorting and so much deciphering. And yeah, so we're going to talk about how exactly we maintain those. So Mark, how do you maintain what are your methods for maintaining some of these languages?
I honestly think it depends. Because I feel like every language is different, especially different language families. So I know that me and you, we are doing Tahini, for example. And how do I maintain that? I would say, and this kind of goes for a general sense, since these languages are, I guess, linguists would say they're extinct or they're dormant or however you'd like to phrase that. It's almost like Latin. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a scholastic language now. It's just written and it's not spoken. And I think the best way to go about it is to actually speak it. So my overall method is just talk. Tana. So that's kind of my general rule for any of them. It's just don't treat it as now it's like a scholastic language like Latin. You actually have to talk it.
Yeah.
So that's my general rule.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, it's really hard to find someone else you could converse with. And for you, I found Tahini, which is great because there are a lot of languages that I've been studying and just there's no one else I can find to talk to. But I think for me, I have lots of methods, silly methods, some of them. But for me, it's, first of all, I think just going over the JPH notes itself and figuring out the sentences, the sentence structure, breaking down which words mean what, like you will basically learn it as you go along, because I do think if you keep writing it down, you'll remember it. And also you're kind of learning it as John Peabody Harrington was learning it. And I think it's, like as you go through it, eventually you'll just remember things and, you'll remember the pronunciation. You'll sometimes put the stress on the words. If you say it out loud as you're typing it or writing it, then it'll really help with remembering it. And yeah, in terms of speaking it, how I started a SoundCloud. I've fallen off the wagon a couple of days ago, but I did want to start a SoundCloud where I spoke every single sentence or phrase that Rosario Cooper spoke in Tahini in the notes, and I would just listen to myself talking and just shuffle the playlist and listen to it over and over again to the point that I could just recognize what she's saying instantly without looking at how it's spelled. And I do think it's helped a lot.
Okay. When it comes to, do you actually handwrite it or are you typing it?
Most of the time I don't actually handwrite it. I do type it. I feel like for me, typing, I still retain a lot of knowledge. You know how people say writing it makes you remember things more. I think for me, when I see the word and when I type it out and I say it out loud on the screen, it's enough for me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I lack, because I actually handwrite everything. And there's no control F I can do on a notebook,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am slightly different. I actually handwrite, but so I have this big old collection of notebooks, and I have to okay, where's my, oh my gosh, where's my Tahini notebook? Is this the right reel? Oh my gosh, not the right reel. So it's a kind of now it's a daunting task to type out. But going off what you said, I think it is important. For me, I like handwriting
Mm-hmm.
because when I'm going through the notes, okay, let's say she's saying like meet ana,
Mm-hmm.
uh beat ana, yak ana, and I'm like, okay, so and it says I talk, you talk, let's say she talks. And I'm like, okay, so all the talks are in common.
Mm-hmm.
Ana is in every single one.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that's changing is this beginning part, me, but or yak. So I was like, okay, this must mean I, this must mean you, this must mean thing. And I kind of write like a question mark, maybe this is true.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
later on, when I'd say, I don't know, mi paspa, this is probably what you would find, you know, mi
Mm-hmm.
paspa or mishna paspa or
Mm-hmm.
yapshna paspa, yeah, you know, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I vomit, you vomit, he, she vomits. So, okay, so then it kind of confirms what I thought, and that kind of makes me remember because I like to, you know, jot things down. So I
Mm-hmm.
think overall, the whole pattern finding and
Mm-hmm. Pattern finding. Yeah. And that's why I use Flex. Is that what Fieldworks Language Explorer?
Mhm.
And um, this, yeah, this when I write down a sentence and when I want to break it down, it remembers the different ways to break a word down. Like it'll glow up blue on the screen and it'll say like, are you trying to say me is for I and is for speak? Now, you can just press enter and it'll remember the different affixes, like what to put on, what the actual root is. And yeah, it's been really helpful. But a lot of times when you're just starting off, you really have to focus on that pattern finding because, the software doesn't exactly know what's broken down yet.
Mm-hmm. So besides the typing out the words, I know, do you like use it on your own time? Like besides when you're writing stuff down?
Oh, sorry,
Like,
the language?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, um, yeah, I'd really like to. And as I said, it's kind of hard to find people who speak it, so I can't really find someone else to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and um, yeah, sometimes when I am studying, for example, with Chimariko,
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of want to go through all the notes so then I can um, really get well known with all the words, focus through all of it. And I was planning on putting out some videos after I am completely comprehensive of everything Sally Noble has said.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it turns out like there was a mistake that I put in my dictionary and, she repeats that word later when Harrington has a better idea of what the sound system of the language is, then it could be more precise. And so I don't want to put out any mistakes out there, any words that
Mm-hmm.
aren't actually how it's said. It was just a mistake said.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I try to use the language outside. I'd really like to talk to someone. Sometimes I just talk to myself, which, I mean, like, a
Yeah.
lot of people would see and be like, what are you doing? So, and I
It's
have tried convincing my friend to learn with me. It hasn't worked.
yeah, it's so funny that you kind of bring up that you people think you're weird when you talk to yourself, but besides, tahini and all the rest of it, um Serrano, the one that I'm actually most comfortable with,
Hmm.
I actually, not that I choose to speak with myself, I just have to speak with myself
Hmm.
because there has to be, I have to maintain it. I have to remember.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm not gonna use every single word, but I
Hmm.
have to use it. And it's funny because when I told Mr. Siva, who the man who taught me and who was actually the last, we consider the last speaker of the language,
Hmm.
when I told him I talked to myself, he laughed and he told me "Umen wito," which means you are an old man. And then he told me a story of an elderly man who was
Mhm.
who spoke, I believe, the Pascagoula dialect, and he was one of the last people, and he would sit outside his house and just talk to himself, so he
Mhm.
can remember the language. So he kind of made a joke out of it, saying that I'm an old man, but there's some kind of sad truth to it. And I was just gonna like say like, well, for example, like me and you, like you have Roomsin and I don't, you know what I mean? Like, so how do you keep that, because like, how do you keep that up to par?
Yeah, I have a lot of methods that you can see on my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Sometimes I like to dub songs, and I don't consider myself a great singer, but they're just songs that, I'm really hyperfixating at the moment. And, I'm like, this is like a really nice song, kind of want to sing it. And then, I would work hard to translate it. Translation is always hard from an English to whatever language because, there are some idioms that don't really exist, maybe. There are some expressions that you don't really know how to translate. So, for example, sorry, something caught my throat. For the song "Linger" that I sang, it was like the thing is like, but I'm in too deep. I didn't know how to say that. You can't because if you say I'm too deep in Roomsin, it doesn't make sense because you might not consider it the same like romantic way.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "I'm such a fool for you," and why do you have to make it linger? And I had no idea how to translate that. And I was just like, how? Because that's technically like an idiom, like an expression. It's not taken literally, like.
Yeah.
Or so at the end, I just decided to use a Roomsin expression. So I said I was coyoted, which basically means, I'm like crazy in love or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I said chos, which kind of means to sting, like when you get injured and your injury stings or burns. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant. So yeah, I try to translate a lot. Sometimes it doesn't really work out. Sometimes it's just the songs that I want to listen to. And sometimes I do also I only have one video of this, but it's the Futurama dub into Roomsin.
Mm-hmm.
That took a really long time, and that was only the 3 first minutes of the first episode.
Wow.
So yeah, sometimes I try to do that. So and after that I go back to my own videos and I listen to it and I just try to see if I can understand it. And it's like, and I posted that Futurama video. I don't even remember when, maybe like last year. So I don't even specifically remember all the lines that I wrote out. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm rewatching it again as a new person,
Okay.
and it
Because
works.
that translation thing, that is hard. Because
Mm-hmm.
like I tried a common thing that's kind of translated. It's probably not you know the thing to translate, but I just say okay. Which is the Lord's Prayer. I think that's a very common one
Mm-hmm.
people translate. Um, and first of all, like it's written in very archaic. The translation's very
Yeah.
archaic. So I'm like, okay, I don't even know what any of like I can barely understand the archaic English, let alone, you
Yeah.
know. So like I have to like find I don't want to say a dumbed down version, but like a dumbed down version,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to translate that. But it's really hard because, like you said, like it was in too deep or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I were to say it, like you're deep in water or something, literally,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
taken literally.
I think like my job they're asking me like, oh, how do you say like superhero? And I'm like, I have no idea. Because like like first of all, super, like that just means good, and then hero,
Yeah.
like what I mean, like what is that?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you like kind of question. um it's, I don't know, it's just so, it's a different, it sounds kind of cheesy, but like a different reality.
Mm-hmm.
um because I think that's what people tend to say is like uh what was I gonna say, for every language you speak, it's like you're a different person almost,
Yeah.
because you tend to express things differently.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
your pronunciation for Rumson, I think is really, of course, I've never heard Rumson spoken, and the only recordings of Isabel Melrose is in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I think, was it that she said one word in Rumson, it was like "Daktewe" or something, It's something like that.
And that word, I don't remember specifically what it was, but I found out later because like when I first heard that word, I was like, makewe, yeah, makewe. I was like, that's a strange word because most Rumsen, you do not end a word in a vowel, and I found out later she's saying what's considered coyote speak. So it's like not the usual language that people converse in. It's like the like kind of like the language that the kind of language that you speak to imitate coyote in myths. So I was like, that's
Oh.
not even like a word that people would use in everyday life. So
But like what I was thinking, I think we talked about this before, is like the like Q.
mhm,
I don't think that sound even exists in Rumsen.
it doesn't. Mm-mm.
So I was thinking, well, maybe their K's are like almost like cuz, like
Makewe.
yeah. So I was like, oh, maybe
Mhm,
that's how you would kind of, it's like, that's your glimpse of how it would be pronounced. But now that you brought that
mhm.
up, it's um now it's like now we wish we had something.
Yeah.
So your
But
job
she
is
just sing a song, yeah.
um so your job is actually a little bit harder because you of course John Harrington had a very good ear, and he pretty much
Mhm,
wrote what he heard, and is as far as we can tell, it's very accurate.
mhm,
So say like that just makes it that much harder to speak a language not only that's not spoken. It's hard to find somebody that's interested or speaks it, but to speak a language that you never heard like either.
mhm,
So there's no, because like for me, I tend to imitate a lot.
mhm,
um so like for example, Shmuich, there's actually good recordings of spoken Shmuich, whether it be stories or word lists or whatever, and I imitate the tone or how it's pronounced and stuff like that, so we can tweak our pronunciation to make it more native like. um but without that, it's just like, okay, just I think that's how you say it. So I applaud you.
mhm. Yeah. It's been hard, but over time, learning how to pronounce things, it gets better. It gets easier. Yeah.
Have you so I'm trying to think, this happened to me once. I actually dreamt in Serrano once.
Wow.
um have you ever dreamt in Lumsen?
Never.
No.
I have not. Well, to be honest, I don't usually remember my dreams. When I wake up in the morning, maybe I'll have a better idea, but then over time, as I wake up, then I only remember like visuals. I don't remember what I heard.
Mm.
Usually, I believe it's English. So, yeah, I don't usually dream in any of the languages that I learn.
Yeah, I've dreamt in Toronto once,
Mm. Must be
and
very powerful.
it was interesting. I kind of remember it now. I think about it. Okay, pop quiz. How do you say dream in Rumsen?
um, oh my god, East.
Okay, so Guachumuk in Serrano. I don't think, did Rosario ever give the word for dream? I don't think she did.
I'm gonna check the dictionary that I have open right now. Nope. At least I haven't gotten to it if it's there.
I don't think she did. Now that I think about it, but again, there's so many words. I could be wrong.
Yeah, she gives a lot of interesting words and some that are very like common that she doesn't give.
Yeah. Um. So, but I think that's
Mhm.
interesting. Um. But let's kind of, and I think we did this. I think you did this once, and I did this before too. Is write a diary or a
Mhm.
diary, a journal or whatever. Just writing out whatever, just so we can use it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
That's one, and that's another way that I like to maintain the other ones.
Yeah. Mhm.
Even
And I was wondering, do you use like things like flashcards, Quizlet, that kind of thing?
I tried flashcards with Limu
Mhm.
because that vocabulary is even more limited than Tahini.
Mhm.
But I one I will always forget just to even use them. You know, like it's like I would take all the time to buy flashcards and then write out the words I want to learn, and then I don't use them. So I guess that's really just not my learning style. But one thing that I actually kind of um, have you heard of Memrise?
I have heard of Memrise, yes.
People make courses,
Hmm.
which is pretty much like a flashcard system. It's pretty much that's what that is. But
Hmm.
for me, it's a more appealing flashcard. It's like
Hmm.
it takes you like, okay, I did this for the language called Romansh, which is spoken in Switzerland.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, you learn people words, so like man, woman, boy, girl, whatever.
Yeah.
So they break up into topics, and it's for me, it's a little bit more appealing than just like you know, something like I don't know the now I think about it, like Quizlet. I think you brought up.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I just tend to just always forget to do it. So I
Yeah.
think for me, my overall is either speak it, or if I'm using it in a journal,
Hmm.
um, yeah. But my
Yeah.
problem is like remembering words.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
I forgot what. Oh, piso. Oh my gosh. Black black balls.
Oh,
Um,
tskuppa.
it's couple. Yeah. Like
Hmm.
I forgot we were. I think we were talking about like the insults and stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the word for like, And I just sit there
Hmm.
and then I couldn't remember for the life of me. But when I'm driving on the road, totally forgetting about it, I'm like, oh, it's this.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You send it to me on through an email and say, I finally figured it out.
So like that, like, okay, let's say I don't know if you ever had this conversation, but have you ever like, let's say you're talking to somebody and you say, oh, I'm learning. Okay, you're in your case, like, okay, I'm learning room sim,
Hmm.
and let's say, oh, and someone tells you, oh, can you say something?
Hmm.
Do you just like automatically forget all your room sims?
I usually just can't think of something on the spot because I don't usually say it anything to an actual person. So I usually ask the person like, "Oh, can you give me a sentence for me to translate to, like a simple sentence?" Sometimes they choose something like, "Oh, I'm going to watch TV," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I can't do that." So give me like a much simpler one. And sometimes they say, "Oh, I'm reading now," and I can piece it together.
Uh-huh.
So,
And some
yeah.
and sometimes you're like okay, like there's no reading either. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes there's even no reading. So, sometimes I was like, okay, choose a very simple word like eat,
mm,
walk, look. And, then they're like, oh, okay, okay, you want that simple. And I was like, yes.
please.
Yeah.
Um yeah, like in the classroom because I that's where I usually am, of course, but ever since 2020 happened,
Mm-hmm.
they would ask me, how do you say what's up? And I'm like, I hope you mean literally what is up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like because I can't help you with what's up,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm
Like,
like
as in, like, a slang
yeah,
expression in the language. Yeah.
yeah. So and I'm like, okay, there was a phrase that he taught me, like it's kind of like a what's it new,
Mm-hmm. What's
but
new?
yeah, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is like the literal translation of what is new, you know. But
Yeah.
so there's some slang and there's some like spoken talk, but um,
Mm-hmm.
the kids, it's kind of hard to get the regular talk versus the you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean. So that's kind of how I do things.
Mm-hmm. Me too.